What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here again today, and today we got a longer video, as today we have on April 1st, April Fool's Day power rankings, essentially. This is not a joke, I swear. And, yeah, to start it off, we have, after a trade deadline, a very different looking NHL. And there are some teams that have absolutely tanked, and there are some teams that have actually gone up quite a bit. One team has stayed the same, and yeah, let's get right into this. In 32nd, moving down 2 spots, we have the Flyers. Give away Claude Giroux, get Owen Tippett out of it. Florida had all the leverage in the trade, so there's really nothing you can do about that trade. I'm trying to think of what else they did. Why can't I think of anything else they did? I can't remember really what Philadelphia did, but yeah, they're still losing. Nothing new. Come back at it again next year and see what happens is all I have to say for Philadelphia. Moving down 2 spots as well, we have the Arizona Coyotes. Their magic run that they had, that they were winning more games than they were losing, is over. They've got to over 20 wins. That's more than what most of us expected of them this season. So for Arizona, you just need to look to build on this. Nick Ritchie's been good with them. Keller's out for the year, unfortunately, so that's really unfortunate. He was having a great year with the Coyotes. He was looking to be almost a point a game, so that's unfortunate for them. You just gotta look. My opinion, if you're the Coyotes, you want Shane Wright, go get him. You lose the rest of your games. Let Montreal pass you up by a bit. Let Seattle pass you up. Just make sure you get that number 1 pick, because that's the only way you're saving your franchise. Moving down 2 spots as well, we have the Devils in New Jersey. New Jersey, they just keep finding ways to lose. Another team that was expected to be better this year, I had them, I think, either last or second to last in my Metropolitan Division rank review or predictions at the start of the year, and they've been exactly where I expected them, but not this bad. I expected some improvement, and I think they might have even regressed, if anything. Jack Hughes has been fine. Everyone else, there's been Jesper Bratt's been okay. I think bringing in Dougie Hamilton, they were thinking it was going to be a big change, but this team is still young. They need something. They need another push. They need. Maybe with Luke Hughes coming in, if he plays next year, that'll be a big asset. Him and Jack will probably have some chemistry as they both play together. And maybe bringing in another big free agent, as they do have some cap space, because after bringing in Dougie Hamilton, you need something else. You need some veterans. Because you have Tatar, but he's playing meh, to describe it at most. And, yeah. And moving up 3 spots, not really because they've been playing excellently, but because these 3 teams have kind of just fallen off. We have Seattle. Seattle, they've been eliminated from the playoffs contention, to say the least. Nearly all the teams in playoff contention have been eliminated from playoff contention in this first row, except for 2, I believe. And then, actually 3, and then there's 1 in the next row, but they've been playing really well. Or I think, yeah, they've been playing really well, so I've excused them from it. So yeah, Seattle, they trade away some people at the deadline, Appleton to Winnipeg. They get back Daniel Sprong, who's a really excellent player. I like Sprong. He can probably provide pretty well for Seattle. They extend Jared McCann, a good move for them again. Giordano to the Leafs. They get back a few picks. That's pretty much what that's what this entire trade deadline was about for. Seattle is getting picks so that they can start stocking up. And they did that job well, so good job to Ron Francis on getting those, but you could have had a better team if you picked wisely. Now moving down 9 spots to 28th, Anaheim. They've lost 10 in a row. They've traded away all their veterans at the deadline, in Lindholm, in Manson, in Delorier, who's not really a veteran, but he got some great they gave to the Wild. Yeah, their plan was to get picks. Pat Verbeek, their GM, just doubled down on the rebuild, and even though they looked pretty good, they were playing excellently for the first half of the year, and now they've just fallen off, and they've now fallen to 7th in their division, even below San Jose. So that's interesting. Moving down 3 spots from last time, we have the Blackhawks. After the deadline, before the deadline, they were in the craps. I'm just keeping this PG. In the craps, and everyone knew they were going to be sellers at the deadline. They didn't know how much they were going to sell, though. No one knew. Fleury was gone, as pretty much everyone expected. Dahan wasn't like I expected. Hagel was gone. I thought that was the more I thought about what was being asked for him, the more I'm like, he's not going anywhere, is he? And then he was the first one to go, and that was a shock. Carpenter's gone. He's a depth piece. Lafferty replaces him easily. I really like Lafferty. He's basically Carpenter with more speed, and he's got a bit more of a goal-scoring punch as well. So Lafferty's been the perfect replacement for Carpenter. I hope Lafferty keeps up his trend. He's probably been the best player on the team the last couple games, and so this is gonna be a very interesting offseason for the Hawks. What they do with Taves, Kane, they probably should extend DeBrincat because he's going to be an RFA in 2023. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what year's which. And you have Taves, Kane, DeBrincat, all of contracts that are up in 2023. So that's going to be an interesting offseason even more if they don't stick around this year. Taves and Kane could be rentals at the deadline for next year. Who knows? And you never know with this team right now. Kyle Davidson, the GM, has said they're going for full rebuild, and that's what they're going to do. They haven't had one since when they got Taves and Kane. So we're going back to the 2000s, and it's going to be a very hard couple of years for the Blackhawks and me as a fan doing BFRs, but we're going to see them grow. And when they get back into contention, we can all have fun, and we can guarantee that they will win a round. And at least I've seen a Stanley Cup in my lifetime, cough, cough, Toronto fans. Some of the stuff they have posted recently is genuinely disgusting. Now moving down 6 spots, in Detroit. Losing 10-7 to Toronto, and then you lose 11-2 to Detroit. To Pittsburgh. 11-2. I've never seen 11 goals in my entire life. And Pittsburgh made it look easy. And defense is one thing, but then the goaltending has been awful as well. I don't know what happened to Nedeljkovic. Nedeljkovic fell off a cliff after he was a Calder finalist. Grice has been awful, and then Picker he's been a third goalie. It's what you can get out of a third goalie these days. And yeah, they've just been dropping everywhere, and I don't really know how it's going to stop. It's the worst defense I've seen probably in my entire life that I can remember. But yeah, that's got to be interesting for. It's not even interesting. It's just awful for Detroit. Like, they had such a high start to the season. They were 5th. They were looking good, and then they've just fallen. They're still 5th in the Atlantic. Or actually, no, they might be 6th now or 5th. They keep switching places with Columbus, but just that's not good for them. And moving up one spot, it's the 25th. We have Ottawa. Ottawa, they're there. I have really nothing to say about them. They didn't really do much at the deadline. They traded Nick Paul to Tampa. They got back a decent return for them, along with Matthew Joseph, who's a young forward that'll never get a chance in Tampa. So, yeah, it's kind of like the Hawks trade Hagel to Tampa. Tampa's building up that third line again. We'll talk about them when we get to Tampa. Like, for Hagel, they got 2 first-round picks and 2 prospects. Taylor Raddysh has been excellent, by the way. I've mentioned that in my BFRs. Back to Ottawa. Trade away Nick Paul, get back Matthew Joseph, who would have never cracked the Ottawa lineup, or Tampa lineup, and yeah, that's basically a fresh start for him. See if he can become a centerpiece of this Ottawa team. Their goal, bounce back next year. Of course, rest in peace to Eugene Melnyk, their owner. We're going to see what's going to happen there as well. But Ottawa's been pretty much staying still, and it shows that they were not ready to come out of the rebuild yet, like Pierre Dorian, their general manager, insisted. Now moving up one spot, nearly single-handedly by Cole Caulfield, is Montreal. Montreal is probably not going to get any higher than this unless they go on a tear through April like the league has never seen. And yeah, Montreal has been. They've lost after their hot streak after St. Louis. They've cooled down a little bit, but Montreal's been playing a lot better than they were under Ducharme. And St. Louis has come in. He's rejuvenized his entire team, especially Caulfield. Caulfield was Rookie of the Month this month. And yeah, so that's really all I have to say on Montreal. Just keep up what they're doing, and they may be back in playoff contention next year. Moving down 2 spots, some teams similar to Detroit. You have Columbus. Some games they'll look great, and some games they'll look awful. Like how good Columbus can be really good, and then how bad they can be is really bad. Laine's had a bounce back year. Nyquist has had a bounce back year. Everyone else, been pretty meh, to be honest. I'm trying to remember other people on that team because they've just not been very relevant. Columbus has been have just been almost fully irrelevant this entire season. They've just been kind of there. It's kind of the usual Columbus tone. They usually, when they were in the playoffs those few years, they were known because it's like, okay, are they going to win a round this year? They're going to win a round this year. Now that they've won 2 rounds since then, they're just kind of there and they're not in playoff spot, but they have the pieces to go farther. Merzlikins in net they've locked up. See what they do with their backup. Is Korpisalo, I believe, is a UFA at the end of the season. Not 100% sure on that. But Line and Nyquist, you have the pieces there to build the team around. You have Werenski on the back end. You gave away Seth Jones last year to the Hawks. He would have been nice to have, but he wasn't in contract. He would be in a contract year this year if the Hawks didn't extend him. So you do what you got to do to make ends meet. And Columbus, we'll see how they come back next year, and we'll see if they can possibly take a crack at a playoff spot if one of the Atlantic teams falls out like Boston. Now, staying in the same spot, I feel like they've already have. I'll check after this video, but San Jose stays in the same exact spot, I believe, as last time, as I think they were in 22nd last time, unless they were in 21st. I hope they weren't, because then I'll look like a fool. But I'm pretty sure they were in 22nd last time. And yeah, San Jose, another team that's similar to Columbus, just been there. They're supposed to be winning, and they gave Hertl an 8-year extension, and that's what Doug Wilson does at GM. So nothing new in San Jose as we move on to number 21, who moving up 10 spots only because this team is Buffalo. Coming back from 4-0 down against Chicago, and then 5-4 down, and then winning in the last 10 seconds of the game. I realized how I didn't talk about the Blackhawks after the deadline. They should be 4-1, not 2-1. Trying to remember the record for a sec. But yeah, Buffalo, they played well in the outdoor game. They won that outdoor game in Hamilton against Toronto. Your young stars of Thompson's been great. Jeff Skinner's come back out of nowhere. Oposo's been good. Olofsson. Basically, if this team could be what it is, except for this entire year, and add a bit in the draft, they'll be adding Owen Power. They'll be adding other guys. This team could genuinely be a Buffalo Sabres team that can make the playoffs for the first time in over a decade, since 2011, and that's saying something because I can remember the last time I watched a Buffalo playoff game. I remember it was, I believe, Game 5 of the Boston-Buffalo series in 2010. Buffalo won that game. That was the last time I saw Buffalo in a playoff game, from what I can remember in my childhood. But yeah, so Buffalo, keep this up. I want to see Buffalo in the playoffs. It's a team I want to see have success. I'd much rather have Buffalo over Toronto. I'm sorry, I'm just screwing with Toronto fans, but it's genuinely hilarious. I do it for the memes, how they lose in the first round every year. And once we do my predictions, we'll see how I rank them. Moving up 7 spots, like the Buffalo, they've kind of bounced back. We have the Islanders. Not winning more than they're losing still, maybe winning a bit more, but the Islanders, another team that's been there this year. They're expected to be in contention for the Cup. With Tampa, at the start of the year when Tampa dropped a bunch of their pieces like Coleman, Goodrow, Gore, they dropped that entire third and part of the fourth line. And the Islanders are expected to slide right into that Eastern Conference final spot, maybe play Florida or Carolina. And that went flying out the window at the start of the year. They started their first 13 games on the road, and they never really recovered from it. And yeah, that's kind of the Islanders' season in a nutshell. If their stadium is ready at the start of the year, who knows how different this year could have been. That's a what if. We'll never know because the stadium wasn't ready. Now, moving down 1 spot, we have a team that's falling out of the playoff race fast, and they've lost a couple games in a row, and it's really a shame because it's another team I want to see succeed, and it's because I like this team, and it's Vancouver. Pettersson, Besser, Miller, Demko, Ekman-Larsson, Hughes, nearly said Tanner Pearson. I'm not a fan of Tanner Pearson. I'm not a fan of his contract, that is. But you get the idea. They ship off Travis Hamonic for a 3rd-round pick to Ottawa, and I don't know what that was, but best trade Vancouver's made in a lot of time. So, yeah, so Vancouver, all you can look at is look at the bright side for next season, and I'd say you're in contention to make the playoffs next season. However, that means the Pacific Division will get better. Calgary, you have Calgary, you have LA, you have Edmonton are probably going to make the playoffs. Vegas, if everyone's healthy, can be a very dangerous team, and with Vancouver in the mix. Seattle, you could assume, will be better. San Jose and Anaheim, probably about the same. But I could see the Pacific possibly having a very different look than it does now, and being an actual stronger division in the league next year. How strong remains to be seen. Teams can fall out of the race. In the Central Division, in the Central, if Dallas doesn't make it this year, there will be some bickering maybe of whether or not to throw it into rebuild or retool of some sort. And then St. Louis is getting older. Minnesota has the huge cap penalties coming up, so it could be a good time for Vancouver to get good and slide right into those spots. And moving up 5 spots is Winnipeg, and although they lose to Toronto last night, they had a 2-0 lead and a 3-2 lead. They've played really well the last couple weeks, and I think they've definitely improved over what they were. And it's another team that's looking to get in, another team that, in my predictions, just fell right off a cliff. And yeah, so Winnipeg, keep it up for the rest of the year. They still have a chance to make the playoffs. Vancouver still does too, but will they? Probably not, with Dallas and Vegas fighting for that spot. Probably not, but if Vegas gets cold and if Vegas and Dallas both get cold and Winnipeg gets hot, they could slide right into that spot. Didn't even mean to do a rhyme there. And moving down 2 spots, we have Dallas. We currently have all the playoff teams, except Dallas is the only playoff team in the bottom 16. It's because they've lost a bunch in a row, while Vegas has won a bit in a row. Sorry about that. So you have Dallas. If they don't make it this year, it's going to be interesting, as they made the final 2 years ago, then they didn't make it last year, they didn't make it this year. And then it would be, okay, so how much does this Dallas team really bring? And it cannot run on one line. Heiskanen's out indefinitely, so that's not great, especially if you're Dallas. Klingberg's a UFA. Will he get paid? And he stayed around. Then how many people expected him to stay around? He did. It's going to be a question of Pavelski. He's been extended. Pavelski on that line with Hintz and Robertson. They look like 3 young guys when it's really 2 young guys and a 37-year-old man. So Pavelski's rejuvenized with these 2 young stars and with Hintz and Robertson, and hopefully he continues to do so. I've always liked Pavelski. He was always that one member of the Sharks team that I did like. Never really was a fan of Thornton or Marlowe, Boyle, or any of those guys until like the new Sharks team like Hurdle, Meyer, those guys I've really liked to watch. Kind of like Vancouver, I've grown to like the teams that were more skill-based more than any grit-based. It's kind of why I didn't like the Rangers' moves in the offseason. I remember there was a comment on one of my videos, it was a while ago now, but it was like, why don't you like about the Rangers game? It's just I thought they overreacted, but turns out they've been pretty good. As we'll see in the power rankings. Now moving down 2 spots is Vegas. Simply because they're out of the playoff race now, and they're not out of the playoff race, but they're currently not in the playoffs, and with Dallas has 3 games in hand on them, and we continue to see, they've won a bunch in a row now, but with their whole team injured, they just got Martinez back, and now they have no, sorry about that again, but now they have no cap space. So they still need to bring in Stone, Pacioretty, McNabb. I think, actually, is McNabb back? I don't remember if McNabb's back or not. But, yeah, several members of their team are just on LTIR. They're way over the cap, and the Dadonov failed trade. Although Dadonov's been one of their best players, it would have been nice to get some little leeway in cap space. Moving up 2 spots, we have Edmonton. McDavid and Draisaitl carry this franchise. That is what we've learned. And McDavid hit 100 points. Draisaitl will hit 100 points. And, yeah, it's casual Edmonton. Probably going to make the playoffs. Probably play LA in round 1. And we'll see what happens. We'll see in my predictions what happens. And we'll see in real life what happens. Nothing really much more to say on that. They didn't actually, I don't think, they brought in Derek Brassard at the deadline. And I think they brought in one more thing. I don't remember what it was, though. 14, we have LA. Realize 3 Pacific Division teams, and that this is realize how most of it's the playoffs. And yeah, the Pacific Division isn't great this year, but LA has been a nice surprise, if you ask. Deneau has scored 20 goals for the first time in his career. Durzi's been excellent. Jonathan Quick has had a rebound, and he's like 35 now, so maybe one more run where he can be the starter. This LA team is back, and we'll see how they do. Kopitar's still with the team, Brown's still with the team, so you got some of the old veterans. Doughty's season is probably over, but LA's still been able to play without him. And yeah, let's see if these young stars mixed with these old Stanley Cup winning veterans like Brown, like Kopitar, like Quick, like Doughty. Let's see if they can pull something off and surprise everyone. And Kings will win their third then in, let me think, 12, so that'll be third in 10 years. Now moving down one spot, we have Nashville. Nothing against Nashville. However, there have been teams that have been surging above them. They've been fine throughout since. People see them as a team that could have done a lot at the deadline to improve, and they didn't do anything really. I can't even remember a trade they made. Yeah, I really can't. But yeah, they've had a great bounce back year. No one expected them to be this good, and yeah, they've just bounced back. Like Saros has been excellent. He's going through a cold patch right now, but by playoff time, I assume he'll get that fixed. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Nashville is in the playoffs. Moving down 5 spots, we have St. Louis. They went on a little bit of a cold streak, barely staying above Nashville. And while Minnesota got really hot, St. Louis got really cold. Thus, why they moved down to 12th. Moves they made at the deadline, once again, not very plentiful. Husso and Ned has been fine. I'm trying to think of anything else to talk about them, but I can't really think of anything. They've just been a fine team. It's a playoff team. And moving on, moving up 5 spots, Washington. Washington, after their nearly falling out of the playoffs to Detroit or Columbus, and by nearly I mean 11 points, big difference, but they were the team that was kind of far out and clearly in the second wild card. But they've fought back. They've made the wild card chase a bit more interesting, as they still will be a wild card team, as those top 3 teams in the Metropolitan are pretty solidified. They made a couple moves at the deadline, bringing back Marcus Johansson and sending out Daniel Sprong, which I think was a mistake. I think Sprong is a better player than Johansson, and Johansson's year in Seattle has been great. So we'll see how Johansson is going to adapt, if he'll be a big difference come playoff time, or if he will just be a depth piece and kind of be not the big one of the main guys like such he was in their 2017 run, I believe. I believe he got the game-winning goal against Toronto in 2017 in Game 6. Moving down 4 spots, we have Calgary. Once again, nothing against Calgary, but there have just been teams in the East that have just soared while the West has just struggled. The East is just... It's kind of, if you know in football, if you know this offseason, the NFL, you have the AFC and NFC. The AFC is just going to destroy the NFC this year. It's pretty lopsided and talent-wise. That's kind of how the East is, except it's not really lopsided talent-wise, but the East is just better than the West, and you can tell by the records, you can tell by the points. Washington would be, I believe, first or second in the division in the Pacific, so that just goes to show how good the East is. Moving up 4 spots, Minnesota. Up until last night, they still got a point. In their overtime loss, but they have won 7 in a row. I think another one of their hot streaks. They win 7 in a row, and they really get ahead of both St. Louis and Nashville, and they make some very, very good moves at the deadline. They possibly have the best goaltending in the league now with Fleury and Talbot, debatably that is, and bringing in Fleury, get a second-round possible first if they get to the conference final. And for Chicago, I'm confident in Minnesota. I wasn't confident before, but now I have confidence in Minnesota that they could go to the conference final. Do I think they will? Essentially, really, no. But I think that if there's a team that's going to upset Colorado, it'll probably be Minnesota in the Central Division playoffs. That is, if it's in the Pacific, probably Calgary. But Calgary, I think, has that bruising style, and they're more physical than Colorado. Even though Colorado does have their share of guys, McKinnon's not afraid to drop the gloves, and he's gotten hurt because of it. Kadri's been known to try and kill people and get suspended in the playoffs. So that could be a problem for Colorado come against Calgary if Kadri's not already suspended. But, yeah. Then moving down 5 spots, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa struggled a bit this month. There was a point where they had a losing record in their last 10, and that's not like Tampa. They went out, they got Brandon Hagel, they got Nick Paul, they gave away Taylor Radish, Matthew Joseph, Boris Kachuk, young prospects or young players that really don't have a spot in their lineup because they already have so much star power. When you have Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, Hedman, they have Vasilevsky in net, Sergachev and McDonough to shore up the left. The left side of their defense is the best in the league without question. Right side is a bit interesting, as it's not really amazing. They have Cal Foote as a young guy. They have Sarnak. And yeah, they have Maroon on their fourth line. He's a depth piece. They got Perry, Belmar. They've got a group of veterans, grit, talent, defensive skill, goaltending. They have it all, and they're making a strong case for them to win their 3rd cup in a row. And will they? We'll see come playoff time. Will they in my predictions? We'll see come playoff time. I said at the start of the year that Tampa wasn't going to be as strong without Gaudreau, without Coleman, without Gord. And they've proven me wrong. They've been just as, if not more strong. Now moving down 2 spots, we have Toronto. Again, nothing against Toronto. I know I like to crap on Toronto. But Toronto, nothing against them. They've played well. Matthews hit 50 goals last night. Good for him. Marner's playing the best hockey of his career. Nylander's been in a bit of a defensive slump, if you ask. If you watch the Steve Dangle podcast, I didn't really notice it until I actually watched the podcast. But I don't really watch Toronto games that often. I don't live in Canada. But, yeah, so hopefully he can turn that around come playoff time. He's probably the most consistent out of all of them in playoff performing. Then you also have Tavares. You also have Riley, Giordano, Brody. Net's the question. Mrazek's out for a while, and Campbell's coming back tomorrow, so Shalgren's going to have to hold the net until then. He's been a good surprise. And, yeah, they made some good moves at the deadline. Was it in the right places? I think they got defense, which is what they needed. Sorry about that, guys. I just took a bit of a break. Hair's a bit of a mess there. But, yeah, Toronto, everything I said beforehand, they got defense. Goaltending was probably what they needed. Now with Mrazek going down, it's going to be up to Campbell and Shalgren up until the playoffs, if not into the playoffs, for a bit. So we'll see how that goes for Toronto. Forward core is pretty solid. David Kamp's nearly got 10 goals. I think that's maybe the total amount he had in 4 years in Chicago. Moving up 5 spots, we have a team that's been on an absolute tear, and that's Boston. Into number 6. Boston, they just don't stop winning. They lose very few games recently, and they've made that jump from Wild Card 2, Wild Card 1, all the way up until fighting for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the division. These 3 are having a dogfight currently for the pairs. They're having a dogfight for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in that division. Whoever plays, so there's going to be some good teams knocked out in the first round in the East. Washington's not a bad team. They'll be going up against Carolina or Florida, and then one of these 3 will be going up against Carolina or Florida. We'll see how that ends up. It's going to be very interesting. My bet is probably Boston probably gets the short end of the stick, but we'll see. Moving up 4 spots, Pittsburgh. Just like Boston, Pittsburgh will get these hot streaks, or I should say like Minnesota. They're pretty hot right now. Like Boston, like Minnesota, very similar. And Tristan Jarry is hopefully will have a much better playoffs than he did in 2021 against the Islanders. That was brutal. Crosby's doing Crosby, Malkin's Malkin. You have Letang on the back end, and then they got Jeff Carter. You have Jason Zucker, who's returned from injury. You have Getzel. You have all these pieces that can help out. Kapanen. They brought in Raquel at the deadline. They have Boyle as depth. This team can probably one last hurrah as Malkin's a UFA at the end of the year. He probably resigns. But Malkin's getting older. Crosby's getting older. Letang, who knows? So this could be a last hurrah for Pittsburgh. Everyone says every year they're going to fall out of the playoffs, and they don't. So it's been since 2006 that they haven't made the playoffs. Crosby's rookie year, I believe, and they're probably going to do it again. Now, moving up 4 spots, you have the Rangers. They brought in Andrew Kopp, who's played phenomenally in New York. He has over a point a game in New York in like 5-6 games, and he fits in perfectly right there. Then they brought in someone else. I'm trying to remember who it was. I can't recall at the moment, but their forward core is even more bolstered. And if Kopp can be a 3rd or 4th line center on your team, you know you have an excellent team. As Kopp, as I could say, could probably play 1st to 4th. It depends on how good your team is. And this Rangers team, it's back. It's ready. The Lundqvist, that kind of era is over. It's a new era starting in New York. It's with Panarin. It's with Zibanejad. It's with Kopp, who's a UFA. Maybe he might be a rental. He might stick around. You never know. Rangers have a ton of cap space. You have Trouba on the back end, who's prove me wrong in my expectations. Reeves is going to be physical in the playoffs. He's got that brand of hockey that the playoffs are meant for, and the Rangers are going to be a very dangerous team. And what even better than Igor Shesterkin in that he's a little cold right now, but I assume come playoff time when he's going to bounce right back. And yeah, he's going to win the Vezina, nearly 100% likely to win the Vezina, and we have probably a franchise goaltender in him, and he's in New York, so what better place to be in terms of popularity. Now, I also have Lafreniere and Kakko has been pretty meh, and Lafreniere has been again pretty meh, but we'll see as they continue to get more ice times, they continue to get older. We'll see how they play out. Now, moving down 1 spot, we have Carolina. Moving down 1 spot, we have Colorado. And moving up 3 spots, we have Florida. Colorado is the clear chaser. He's their only team over 100 points currently. And then you have Florida and Carolina, who are tied for the top of the East in points. I believe Florida has the tiebreaker. And Florida is just really hot right now. And Colorado, they've lost a few games here and there, but they've returned to their winning ways. Only took away their 1 spot because they were a little cold at the start of the month. And then Carolina, they did have a bit of a losing streak. They lost 4 or 5 in a row, so they moved down to 3rd. But yeah, Florida and Colorado, they are the top 2 teams in the league, in my opinion. Carolina's a close 3rd. And these 3 teams show how different the NHL is going to look over the 2010s. In 2010s, you had Chicago, you had Pittsburgh, who's still up there. The Rangers were good during that time. Tampa's been part of this decade. Stuttering there. Boston was part of the old decade. Washington was part of the old decade. Buffalo was still bad in this decade, but that's just making a joke. But yeah, just like how Detroit was in the late 90s and 2000s, like how the Islanders and Oilers and Canadians and the Flames were in the 80s, and in the 70s it was the Canadians and the Flyers and the Bruins. This generation is going to have some new teams. They already have shown Tampa's already won the first 2 cups of the decade. You got Florida, so 2 Florida teams. You got Carolina. Colorado's rejuvenated for the first time since the 2000s, basically. Unless you count that random run in 2014 where that analytics just did not add up with Colorado's success. But yeah, that's the power rankings for today. If you have, if there's anything else that you guys would change, let me know down in the comments. The Blackhawks play Tampa in half an hour from the end of this video, or little less than half an hour. And tell me what your thoughts down below. Tell me how you think teams are going to finish off the season, hot or cold. Tell me who you're going to be rooting for this playoffs. Who is going to surprise us? Who is going to make a jump into a playoff spot? Who of the 4 teams down here, Vegas, Dallas, Winnipeg, Vancouver, is going to claim that final playoff spot? And yeah, leave any of your thoughts down below, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.